The Canon Star Wars saga is still very well known and has a dedicated fan base. So we'll start off with the invasion of Naboo, the start of the Clone Wars, the rise and fall of the Empire leading to the rise of the New Republic, and its conflict with the First Order. We'll be covering the entire story, including sources from books, video games, and more. If you've ever wanted a comprehensive overview, this is it. Let's get started. The invasion of Naboo in 32 BBY began when the Trade Federation, a powerful and profit-driven organization led by Viceroy Newt Gunray, initiated a blockade around the small planet of Naboo. At the heart of this invasion was the Trade Federation's objection to the newly imposed Republic taxes on trade routes, a policy they saw as a direct attack on their profits. Under the hidden influence of the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, the Trade Federation's leaders were drawn into a scheme far darker and more treacherous than they realized. Following the Sith Order's apparent extinction from the galaxy after Darth Bane's establishment of the Rule of Two, the Sith had seemingly vanished from the galactic stage, yet Darth Sidious and his master Darth Plagueis had been working in the shadows, orchestrating these events to advance their plan for galactic domination. Queen Padme Amidala, the young ruler of Naboo, watched as her planet was surrounded by massive Trade Federation battleships, cutting off all access to and from her world. Her attempts at diplomacy within the Senate fell short, as the bureaucratic process stalled and key politicians hesitated to intervene. With the blockade in place, the Trade Federation's armies invaded Naboo, deploying legions of battle droids to capture the capital city of Theed. The citizens of Naboo, a peaceful people with no standing army, were swiftly overwhelmed. Entire villages were occupied, and Queen Amidala herself was captured and held under house arrest in her own palace. The Trade Federation's actions sent shockwaves through the galaxy, challenging the Republic's ability to protect its members and exposing the Senate's vulnerability to corporate influence. Amidala's capture, however, was short-lived. Two Jedi Knights, Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, were dispatched by the Jedi Council to negotiate with the Trade Federation, but were quickly targeted for assassination on Sidious's orders. Escaping with their lives, the Jedi made their way to Naboo, where they helped Queen Amidala escape the Trade Federation's control and seek aid from the Republic. During their flight, they made an unexpected stop on Tatooine, where Qui-Gon discovered a Force-sensitive slave boy named Anakin Skywalker, who's said to carry the potential to bring balance to the Force, being the chosen one for that. On Tatooine, the Jedi received their first unsettling glimpse of the Sith's return when Darth Maul ambushed Qui-Gon Jinn, engaging him in a fierce duel just as Qui-Gon was about to make his escape. Escaping Maul, the squad makes it safely to Coruscant to plea for help from the Senate. However, Amidala's plea for help was met with political inaction, as influential senators and bureaucrats prioritized personal agendas over justice. Seeing the Republic's weakness, she called for a vote of no confidence in Supreme Chancellor Valorum, leading to his removal and the election of Senator Palpatine of Naboo as the new Chancellor, a position that would serve Sidious's agenda in the years to come and reveal itself to be the reason that he initiated the blockade in the first place. After his election as Chancellor, Palpatine took the final step to solidify his path to ultimate power by killing his master Darth Plagueis in his sleep. This act of treachery not only eliminated the only being powerful enough to potentially challenge him, but also marked his ascension as the sole Dark Lord of the Sith. With his master gone, Palpatine was free to enact his grand plan without any interference. The final battle took place on the plains of Naboo, where Queen Amidala, allied with the indigenous Gungan warriors, led a counteroffensive to reclaim her planet. The Gungan Grand Army, led by the great General Jar Jar Binks, bravely fought the Trade Federation's battle droids, while Amidala's forces infiltrated the palace to capture Viceroy Gunray. Meanwhile, in Theed's hangar, the Jedi confronted Darth Maul. In a fierce duel, Maul mortally wounded Qui-Gon, only to be defeated by Obi-Wan, who struck him down with his master's lightsaber. The battle is ultimately won when a young Anakin Skywalker destroys the Trade Federation control ship, thus deactivating the droids on the ground down below. With the Trade Federation's forces defeated and Gunray captured, the invasion of Naboo came to an end. However, the conflict left its effects on the galaxy. While Naboo was liberated, the Republic's inability to respond decisively was exposed, and the seeds of distrust and political manipulation planted by Sidious would soon blossom into a galaxy-wide conflict. Anakin Skywalker, now taken as Obi-Wan's apprentice, began his path toward a destiny that would forever alter the course of galactic history. This invasion would be remembered as the first open strike in the Sith's hidden campaign to unravel the Republic, setting the stage for the turmoil that would lead to the fall of the Jedi and the dawn of the Empire. The Clone Wars began as a direct result of the political instability and manipulations that had taken root during the invasion of Naboo, a conflict that laid bare the Republic's weaknesses and set the stage for far greater turmoil. 10 years after Naboo's invasion, the galaxy was again thrown into chaos, this time by a full-scale civil war that would ultimately shape the fate of the Republic and the Jedi Order. The seeds of the Clone Wars were planted in the aftermath of Naboo's invasion, orchestrated by Darth Sidious, the now Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Using his dual identity to control both sides of a growing galactic schism, Sidious engineered divisions that would ultimately fracture the Republic. Many systems, disillusioned by the Senate's corruption and inefficacy, began to rally behind Count Dooku, a charismatic former Jedi who publicly criticized the Republic's failures. Unbeknownst to most, Dooku was Sidious's new Sith apprentice, Darth Tyrannus, and he led a separatist movement designed to pull the galaxy into war. As the Separatist Alliance formed, gathering allies across hundreds of star systems, the threat of a large-scale conflict loomed even larger. The Republic's lack of a standing military became a glaring issue, one that the Senate was reluctant to address. However, with pressure mounting and Separatist forces expanding their reach, support for the Republic army grew. This led to the sudden revelation of a secret clone army on Kamino, commissioned by Jedi Master Sifo Dyas years earlier under mysterious circumstances. These clones, grown and trained specifically for warfare, were based on the genetic material of the Mandalorian bounty hunter Jango Fett, who also happened to serve as an agent for Darth Tyrannus. With the threat of separatist droid armies looming, the Republic swiftly approved the deployment of the clone army. The war officially began on the desert world of Geonosis, where Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi uncovered a separatist droid factory and discovered the massive droid army assembled to wage war against the Republic. Obi-Wan, Anakin Skywalker, and Senator Padme Amidala were captured while investigating, but were quickly rescued by the Jedi Order. The ensuing Battle of Geonosis saw the first deployment of the clone troopers, and the Jedi fought alongside them against the Separatists' seemingly endless droid forces. Although the Republic claimed victory, the battle was only the beginning of a conflict that would engulf the galaxy. As the war spread across star systems, the Jedi were pulled from their traditional role as peacekeepers and thrust into positions of military leadership. Jedi Knights and Masters, including Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and even Grandmaster Yoda became generals in the newly formed Grand Army of the Republic, leading clone battalions in countless battles. The Jedi's involvement would come at great cost, as many members of the Order began to question the ethical implications of leading an army bred solely for war, and the dark side grew ever stronger. Throughout the Clone Wars, Chancellor Palpatine's power continued to expand. He leveraged the crisis to consolidate unprecedented authority, often overriding the Senate and bending laws in the name of emergency powers. No one suspected that Palpatine himself was orchestrating the entire war to pit both sides against one another, draining the Republic's resources and drawing the Jedi into a position of vulnerability. The Clone Wars saw brutal battles and intense struggles, from the urban warfare of Christophsis to the haunting campaign on Umbara. Key victories and losses shaped the Republic, and the galaxy's hero became its tragic figure. Anakin Skywalker emerged as a war hero, but the ongoing war and his growing frustration with the Jedi Order limitations would push him closer to the dark side. At the heart of Sidious's plot was the manipulation that would forever alter the course of the galaxy: the fall of Anakin Skywalker. In his most desperate hour, Anakin succumbed to Sidious's promises to save his wife Padme. He pledged his allegiance to the dark side, receiving the new identity of Darth Vader. The apprentice Sidious had long desired. With Anakin's transformation into Vader, the Sith were poised to complete their millennia-old vendetta against the Jedi. Then, at the command of Darth Sidious, Order 66 was executed. Across battlefields and star systems, clone troopers turned on their Jedi leaders without hesitation. The Jedi, once revered as guardians of peace, were systematically purged, decimated in a single devastating act of treachery. Anakin, now Darth Vader, led an assault on the Jedi Temple, slaughtering all within its walls, even the younglings he had once vowed to protect. This horrific massacre marked the Sith's ultimate revenge and the near-total annihilation of the Jedi Order. For a millennium, despite countless wars and relentless conflict, the Jedi had always emerged resilient, standing as defenders of peace and justice, but never before had they suffered a defeat of this magnitude. Never in the entire history had they been driven so close to extinction, their numbers reduced to mere remnants scattered across the galaxy. The Sith had finally succeeded in nearly eradicating their ancient foes, achieving a triumph that had eluded them for generations. The Clone Wars ultimately were revealed as a grand deception, a war manufactured by Darth Sidious to destroy the Jedi and pave the way for the Empire. What had started as a simple trade dispute over the invasion of Naboo more than a decade earlier had spiraled into a galaxy-wide conflict, plunging billions into suffering and reshaping the very fabric of galactic governance. With the Republic gone and the Jedi nearly extinct, Sidious's empire rose from the ashes, and the Sith's ultimate victory was complete. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, destined to bring balance to the Force, had fallen into darkness, re-emerging as Darth Vader, the feared enforcer of the Emperor's new galactic empire and powerful ally of the Sith. The Galactic Civil War, spanning from 0 to 5 ABY, marked by the struggle between the oppressive Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance, a coalition of freedom fighters from across the galaxy determined to restore the Republic and bring fall to the Empire. The war's origins lay in the rise of Emperor Palpatine, who had transformed the Republic into a galactic empire following the Clone Wars. Using fear and the might of his Imperial forces, he maintained an iron grip on countless star systems, suppressing opposition and enforcing loyalty through brutal tactics. The tipping point of the war came with the construction of the Death Star, a massive space station capable of destroying entire planets. Meant as a weapon of ultimate control, the Death Star was also a symbol of the Empire's unrelenting power. However, the Alliance managed to acquire secret plans to the station, revealing a critical flaw. Led by Princess Leia Organa, the rebels fought to transmit these plans to their forces, despite Leia's capture by Darth Vader. Leia's call for help reached a young farm boy on Tatooine, Luke Skywalker, the son of Darth Vader, sparking his journey to join the rebellion and ultimately become a Jedi with the help of the exiled Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the few survivors of the Clone Wars. The first significant victory of the Rebel Alliance came during the Battle of Yavin, where a small rebel fleet launched a desperate assault on the Death Star. Luke, guided by the Force, delivered a perfect shot into the station's thermal exhaust port, triggering a chain reaction that destroyed the Death Star and dealt a crushing blow to the Empire. The victory at Yavin rallied countless systems to the Rebel cause, but it also intensified the Empire's resolve to eradicate the Alliance. Over the next few years, a war waged across numerous fronts. The Rebels established hidden bases in remote locations, while the Empire hunted them relentlessly. One of the war's most pivotal moments was the Battle of Hoth, where the Empire discovered and attacked the Rebel base on the icy planet of Hoth. Forced to evacuate, the Rebels suffered heavy losses, yet continued to elude the Empire and regrouped to fight another day. As the conflict progressed, Luke Skywalker sought to strengthen his connection to the Force, training with Jedi Master Yoda on Dagobah in hopes of becoming the Jedi who could turn the tide against the Sith. Meanwhile, the Empire constructed a second Death Star, even more powerful than the first, and prepared to crush the rebellion once and for all. The Battle of Endor became the decisive confrontation of the Galactic Civil War. The Rebel Alliance, learning of the new Death Star's construction, launched a daring assault, while a ground team, including Han Solo and Leia Organa, worked with the native Ewoks to disable the Death Star's shield generator on Endor's forest moon. In space, the Rebel fleet fought against overwhelming odds, with Luke confronting Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine aboard the Death Star. Palpatine attempted to turn Luke to the dark side, but in a final act of redemption, Vader turned on his master and saved his son, killing Palpatine and seemingly ending the Sith's rule over the galaxy. Moments later, the Rebel fleet destroyed the Death Star, and the Empire suffered a catastrophic defeat. The Battle of Endor was a victory not only for the Alliance, but for all those who had suffered under the Empire's tyranny. Across the galaxy, celebrations erupted as planets cast off Imperial rule. The death of the Emperor and the destruction of the Death Star left the Empire leaderless and fragmented, with countless worlds seizing the opportunity to liberate themselves. The Galactic Civil War, while technically continuing in skirmishes and pockets of resistance, was effectively won by the Rebel Alliance at Endor. The victory established the foundation for the New Republic and the rise of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order, marking the beginning of a new era of freedom, justice, and hope across the galaxy under the governance of the New Republic. While the Galactic Civil War seemed won by the Rebel Alliance at the Battle of Endor, the Empire's remnants continued to resist the New Republic's advances. Operation Cinder was conceived by Emperor Palpatine long before his death. This Scorched Earth campaign was designed to leave the Empire's worlds in ruin. Fueled by the Empire's desire to deny his enemies the satisfaction of his Empire's remnants, the Emperor's message was clear: if he could not rule, then neither would the galaxy prosper from his Empire's ashes. Upon Palpatine's death, members of an elite faction known as the Sentinels activated Operation Cinder. These Sentinels were robotic enforcers programmed with Palpatine's last commands, bearing his likeness to strike fear and obedience into the remaining Imperial officers. They delivered orders to deploy climate-manipulating satellites on various planets, sparking massive environmental devastation. These satellites generated destructive weather patterns, hurricanes, earthquakes, and electrical storms that ravaged ecosystems, cities, and infrastructures. Operation Cinder indiscriminately targeted both New Republic strongholds and Imperial loyal worlds, causing mass devastation across the galaxy. Planets such as Naboo, Vardos, and Burnin Khan suffered some of the worst effects. Naboo, the Emperor's own homeworld, faced torrential storms and wildfires, devastating its people and beautiful landscapes. Vardos, a loyal Imperial planet that had been steadfast in its devotion to Palpatine's rule, marked a turning point for a lot of Imperials. When Operation Cinder was ordered on Vardos, even fiercely loyal Imperial officers began to question Palpatine's intentions, as it became clear that his loyalty had never been to the Empire or its people, but solely to his own power. This disillusionment fractured the remaining Imperial forces. Some Imperial loyalists, like Iden Versio of the Inferno Squad, defected to the New Republic, realizing that Palpatine's vision of control was one of self-destruction rather than loyalty to the Empire's citizens. As Operation Cinder wreaked havoc, the New Republic intensified its campaign to eliminate the Empire's remaining strongholds. These efforts culminated in the Battle of Jakku, the final, decisive showdown of the Galactic Civil War. By this time, Jakku had become the rallying point for the last organized forces of the Empire, which had amassed an impressive fleet and military presence in a final bid to resist the New Republic. Located in the Outer Rim, Jakku was an unlikely setting for such an important battle. It was a remote, desert-covered backwater planet that held little strategic value. However, Imperial leadership chose it as their final stronghold, in part to retreat as far from the New Republic's core systems as possible, hoping to make a stand where the enemy's reach was weakest. The battle over Jakku was an epic clash, as both the New Republic and the Empire understood that this confrontation would decide the fate of the galaxy. Fighting raged both in space and on the desert sands of Jakku. In orbit, massive Star Destroyers clashed with New Republic capital ships, filling the sky with fiery wreckage and twisted metal. However, as the fight raged on, the Super Star Destroyer Ravager, the flagship of the Imperial fleet, was destroyed by the New Republic. The Ravager's loss marked the end of the battle and the effective collapse of the Empire's fighting force. As the Empire's fleet crumbled under the New Republic's superior coordination and strategy, several Star Destroyers crashed onto Jakku's surface, creating the iconic Graveyard of Giants. The barren deserts became littered with enormous wrecks, including the remains of Imperial and New Republic ships alike. These wrecks would remain on Jakku for decades, serving as haunting relics of the Empire's last stand and a source of scavenger livelihood in the years to come. With the New Republic victorious, the Empire was left in ruins, its leadership fractured and demoralized. Shortly after the battle, Imperial officers were brought to the negotiating table, resulting in the signing of the Galactic Concordance. This peace treaty officially ended the Galactic Civil War, and its terms imposed severe limitations on the remnants of the Empire. Among the most notable terms, the Empire agreed to disarm and disband much of its military, as well as abandon claims to certain territories. The New Republic imposed a strict ban on any military buildup by Imperial forces and prohibited the use of symbols associated with the Empire. The New Republic, now victorious, found itself in a difficult position. Though it had brought peace to the galaxy, the scars left by the Empire's collapse and Operation Cinder meant that many worlds remained in disrepair. The Republic also faced the challenge of uniting a galaxy still reeling from the Empire's reign and devastated by years of war. Following the Empire's defeat at the Battle of Jakku in 5 ABY, the New Republic achieved a significant victory, signaling the official end of the Imperial rule. The subsequent Galactic Concordance peace treaty imposed severe restrictions on the Empire, limiting its military capabilities and restricting it to the select territories within the galaxy's inner rim. Recognizing the destruction caused by the Empire's centralization of military power, the New Republic was committed to decentralization, dismantling much of its military forces and allowing individual star systems more autonomy. This policy aimed to prevent the rise of another authoritarian regime, but it also left the New Republic unprepared for potential threats. Many senators believed that centralized power would only breed future conflict, while others, led by pacifist factions, argued that diplomacy alone could maintain peace. Following the Empire's formal defeat, a faction of Imperial hardliners refused to surrender, maintaining hostility toward the New Republic and initiating a prolonged Cold War, occupying worlds that didn't want to be reintegrated into the New Republic. While no major conflicts erupted, tensions persisted due to unresolved resentment from the Galactic Civil War. Over time, this Imperial remnant began to colonize the unknown regions. These loyalists took advantage of the disarray following Operation Cinder, using hidden bases, stockpiles of weapons, and Palpatine's carefully prepared infrastructure to organize the First Order, a militarized regime rooted in the ideologies of the old Empire and set on reasserting Imperial dominance. Under the leadership of Supreme Leader Snoke, a dark and enigmatic figure whose origins were shrouded in mystery, the First Order was determined to restore what they saw as rightful control over the galaxy. Snoke capitalized on the disillusionment felt by former Imperial officers, soldiers, and citizens who had suffered under the New Republic's at times ineffectual governance. This support allowed the First Order to recruit fervently loyal followers, committed to reclaiming their former dominance. A promise of return to order and strength. They developed cutting-edge starships, weapons, and systems of control, including the fearsome Stormtrooper Corps, re-engineered as an elite, highly indoctrinated military force trained from childhood to serve the Order without question. The First Order also started developing a formidable fleet, larger and more advanced than the New Republic could have anticipated. In the New Republic Senate, the prospect of a revitalized empire was often dismissed, and reports of the First Order's activities were frequently downplayed as the exaggerated concerns of warhawks and imperial nostalgics. This lack of urgency allowed the First Order to operate largely unchecked, while Snoke's agents used political and economic influence to further divide the New Republic's leadership. Many senators prioritized economic prosperity and regional stability, opposing any moves that would revive the military. In contrast, Leia Organa, a war hero and former senator, recognized the First Order's growing threat long before most. Leia's insights stemmed from her experiences as a leader in the Rebel Alliance and her encounters with various Imperial holdouts. When her warnings were ignored by the New Republic Senate, Leia and some old Alliance members established a resistance, a loosely organized independent militia composed of former Rebel veterans, sympathizers, and young idealists. Funded through private backers and organized by a skeleton leadership, the resistance served as an unofficial defense force against the First Order. Leia's decision was controversial, creating friction within the New Republic's political landscape. Some viewed the resistance as an unnecessary provocation that would only draw the galaxy back to war. Over time, Leia's foresight proved valuable, as resistance operatives uncovered increasingly alarming evidence of the First Order's military growth and ambitions. However, Leia's reputation within the Senate was severely undermined when her parentage as the daughter of Darth Vader was publicly exposed, causing many to question her motivations and reinforcing resistance to her warnings. The Cold War period was marked by intelligence gathering and occasional skirmishes in remote star systems, as the Resistance and First Order both operated below the radar of New Republic's attention. Resistance pilots conducted dangerous reconnaissance missions, gathering critical intelligence about the First Order's military activities in the unknown regions. Despite mounting evidence gathered by the Resistance showing that the First Order was violating the Galactic Concordance through militarization, the New Republic remained largely indifferent. The Senate, influenced by pacifists and isolationists, resisted proposals to establish a robust defense program, often dismissing the Resistance as alarmist. The prevailing view was that the era of galactic wars had ended with the Empire, and that any attempt to escalate defenses would lead to unnecessary expenses or destabilize regional peace. This complacency proved disastrous, as the First Order gradually reached a position of absolute strength, unhindered by external interference. Behind closed doors, Supreme Leader Snoke and his commanders prepared for open war, confident that the New Republic was unprepared for a renewed galactic conflict. By 34 ABY, the Cold War reached a breaking point as the First Order's leadership judged that their forces were ready to strike. The finalization of the construction of Starkiller Base, a superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems, signaled that the First Order no longer intended to hide. The Resistance War, also known as the First Order Resistance War, erupted in 34 ABY with a destructive attack on the New Republic, throwing the galaxy into chaos and reigniting large-scale galactic warfare. Starkiller Base, a technological marvel and a devastating weapon, was engineered by the First Order in secret within the planet Ilum. Capable of harnessing and unleashing the power of a star, Starkiller Base fired a single cataclysmic blast that obliterated the entire Hosnian system in moments. Billions of lives were lost, including high-ranking officials, military personnel, and civilians from every part of the Republic. This catastrophic event effectively wipes the New Republic's central government off the galaxy. News of the attack spread quickly, instilling widespread fear and chaos. Star systems that had aligned themselves with the New Republic faced an uncertain future without a governing body or standing military to protect them. Many worlds, especially those on the Republic's outer reaches, felt isolated and defenseless as the First Order began to seize control over key trade routes, resources, and strategic planets. Realizing the gravity of the situation, General Leia Organa quickly mobilized the Resistance. Comprised of former Rebel Alliance veterans, pilots, technicians, and a new generation of fighters, the Resistance was a relatively small, loosely organized force compared to the First Order's massive military. But with the entirety of the New Republic government obliterated, they were the galaxy's last line of defense. Knowing that they were outmatched in both numbers and resources, Leia and her commanders decided to likely have to rely on guerrilla tactics, intelligence operations, and covert alliances with sympathetic planetary systems, just like in the days of the Rebel Alliance. The Resistance's first critical victory came when they destroyed Starkiller Base itself. A daring assault led by Han Solo, Chewbacca, a young Jedi named Rey, and a former Stormtrooper Finn, who managed to infiltrate the base, disable its defenses, and allow Resistance X-Wings to strike a fatal blow, resulting in the base's destruction. This victory provided a temporary reprieve from the First Order's overwhelming firepower, but came at the cost of Han Solo's life, a loss that would reverberate through the ranks of the Resistance. Following the destruction of Starkiller Base, the First Order retaliated swiftly, forcing the Resistance to evacuate their primary base on the planet Dakar. Under relentless pursuit by the First Order fleet, the Resistance narrowly escaped, though their forces suffered heavy losses. During this period, the First Order revealed a new technological advantage, a hyperspace tracking system, which allowed their fleet to follow the Resistance even through hyperspace. This constant chase marked the start of a grueling and desperate period for the Resistance, as they were hounded across the galaxy by the First Order with limited resources and few places to seek refuge. With fuel reserves dwindling and Leia in a coma due to a previous attack, internal conflicts arose over command decisions from Admiral Holdo. Ultimately, she sacrificed herself to cripple the First Order flagship in a desperate maneuver known as the Holdo Maneuver, helping the Resistance escape to the abandoned base on Crate. On Crate, they made a last stand in an abandoned Rebel Alliance base. Outnumbered and cornered, the Resistance forces prepared to face the full might of the First Order. The First Order deployed AT-M6 walkers and a massive ground assault force, intent on crushing the Resistance once and for all. In this dire hour, hope arrived in the form of Luke Skywalker, who projected himself through the Force across the galaxy to confront the new Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, who had just previously killed Snoke, buying time for the Resistance to escape through hidden tunnels. Although Luke's sacrifice allowed the Resistance to flee, their numbers had dwindled to only a few dozen by the end of the battle. The survivors escaped aboard the Millennium Falcon, realizing that they would have to rebuild from scratch if they were to continue the fight. Despite this, Luke's sacrifice became a rallying symbol of hope for the galaxy, and news of his heroic stand began to inspire others to resist the First Order. As the Resistance licked its wounds, it became clear that the threat of the First Order extended beyond Supreme Leader Snoke and Kylo Ren. A new and darker power revealed itself in the form of Emperor Palpatine, who had somehow survived his apparent death and was secretly building an even greater threat on the hidden world of Exegol. Here, in the unknown regions, Palpatine amassed the Sith Eternal Fleet, a colossal armada of Star Destroyers equipped with planet-destroying weapons, each capable of annihilating entire worlds. It turns out that Palpatine had been behind Snoke the whole time, and that he had orchestrated the rise of the First Order as well. The Sith Eternal Fleet was the culmination of Palpatine's long-term vision, with each Star Destroyer prepared to enforce a new era of Sith domination across the galaxy. Exegol became the focal point of the Resistance's final campaign. They realized that if they could not defeat Palpatine and his fleet, the galaxy would face a new Dark Age, one far worse than the Empire had imposed. With the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, the Resistance launched a desperate assault on Exegol. This attack only being possible through the guidance of Rey, who had trained under both Leia and the ghost of Luke Skywalker. Rey led the charge against Palpatine himself, armed with a combined strength and knowledge of past Jedi. Meanwhile, Poe Dameron and the Resistance fleet coordinated a battle above Exegol, with the last remnants of the Resistance and allies from various systems arriving in a final united stand against the Sith Eternal fleet. The battle was fierce and chaotic, as Resistance pilots fought the Sith fleet while Rey confronted Palpatine on the planet's surface. Using the power of the Jedi who came before her, Rey, with the help of a turned Kylo Ren, ultimately defeated Palpatine, ending his influence over the galaxy for a final time. She barely survived the encounter, but was ultimately saved by the sacrifice of Ben Solo, who redeemed himself in his final moments by transferring his life force to save her life. With the destruction of the Sith Eternal fleet and Palpatine's final defeat, the First Order was thrown into disarray, its leadership shattered and its forces scattered across the galaxy. Though the First Order and Sith Eternal had been defeated, the galaxy faced a precarious future. The New Republic had been annihilated, and the Resistance, though victorious, was severely depleted, with most of its leadership including Leia being dead. Without a central governing body, the galaxy faced a new challenge, rebuilding and restoring order after years of war and division. In the war's aftermath, Rey, now the last known Jedi, was tasked with preserving the legacy of the Jedi Order while seeking a new balance between light and dark in the Force. Her journey represented the galaxy's own challenge, learning from the past while forging a new path forward. Though the Resistance War had ended, the work of building a lasting peace had only just begun, with the galaxy standing at a crossroads, caught between the scars of its recent past and the hope of a brighter future. And there we have it. Like the video for more content in the future. Thanks, and till next time.